Yo, what's up guys, Alpha, and today I'm going to be doing a full in-depth deck breakdown of a deck that I've recently used to get top 15 with on the arena ladder. Now I've finally also got myself untapped, so I can show you the win rate I've got with the deck as well. And as you can see, I'm currently 17-1 with the deck, so it's been performing really well for me so far. So before I get into it, there's going to be a Scryfall link down in the description, and if you click on that, it'll have the full deck list there that you can easily import into Arena if you want to try the deck out for yourself. And as usual, I'm not going to be reading out the text on every single card, otherwise the video will go on for ages. So if you don't know what any of the cards do, just quickly pause the video, fire up the Scryfall link, and have a quick read of any of the cards that you're unfamiliar with. So with that all out of the way, this is my Greasefang Madness deck in Historic. Now, one of the new cards that has been really powerful for me so far in Historic is Greasefang Okiba Boss. And this combos really well with Parhelion. So the way this combo works is, Greasefang is a 3-mana 4/3, and at the beginning of combat on our turn, we can bring a vehicle back from our graveyard to the battlefield, we give it haste, and then it returns to our hand at the beginning of the next end step. So the way this works is we try and get Parhelion into the graveyard in the first 2 turns of the game, and then when we cast Greasefang on turn 3, we get Parhelion back, it has haste from the Greasefang, we can crew it immediately because Greasefang has 4 power, and then it can attack, and Parhelion is a 5/5 flying first strike vigilance, so that's already getting in for 5 hasty damage in the air, and then when it attacks it also creates 2 4/4 flying vigilance tokens as well that are also attacking. So on turn 3, or if we get this combo off on turn 3, we get to attack in the air for 13 hasty damage, we get to keep 2 4/4 flying vigilance tokens on the battlefield, and then Parhelion returns to our hand, and if we can find a way to discard it to the graveyard, we can do it again the following turn. So this combo is insanely strong, and even if you don't have it on turn 3, you know, 13 hasty damage in the air, also putting 2 4/4 flying vigilance tokens into play is really strong at any point of the game. So it's just a really sick combo, and the fact that we can pull this off on turn 3 will just randomly win you games in the early game before the game even gets started, really. So I've been trying out a bunch of different shells for this combo, and this Mardu Madness shell has been by far the best so far. First of all, because it consistently enables the combo. You know, the Madness decks are already going to be running a bunch of discard and looting effects, which is great at both getting Parhelion into the graveyard and also digging for Greasefang. And outside of that, the thing I really like about this particular build is the deck works really well even without Greasefang as well. You know, it plays quite similarly to the Mono Red Madness deck that's been around for a while now, in that we can have very fast aggressive starts even without Greasefang. We can stabilise pretty well against most of the other aggressive creature decks, and additionally we can also grind pretty well in the late game, especially now that we have access to Croxa as well. You know, one of the problems that I had trying to fit this combo into other shells is that you often had to warp your deck a little bit to fit the combo in. So for example, the first shell that I tested it in was Esper, sort of more focused around artifact synergies, running the new 4-mana Tezzeret Planeswalker. And the deck was good, but I was having to run additional looting style effects in order to get Parhelion into the graveyard, so I was having to run stuff like Charter Course and Faithful Mending, which didn't really make sense in an artifact shell. Whereas this deck, you know, a Madness deck, you're already wanting to run these sort of faithless looting, discard and draw style effects, so it fits perfectly well in, and the rest of the deck works really well even when you don't have the combo. So let's start having a look at the rest of the cards in the deck. First of all, we'll have a look at the discard enablers. So starting off, we've got 4 copies of Blood Fountain. So this is a 1-mana artifact. When it enters the battlefield, we get a blood token, and we can pay 4 and tap it and sack it to return 2 creatures from our graveyard to our hand. So the blood token is really nice on this. It works as a discard enabler both for our Greasefang, for our Parhelion, so that we can use Greasefang with it. As well, we've also got, you know, Madness cards and Croxa, as well as looting and Pyromancer that work in the graveyard as well. So the blood tokens provide a lot of value in this deck, and the fact that we can crack them at instant speed is also really nice. First of all, because it's great at concealing information. So, for example, if we looting away a Parhelion into our graveyard during our turn, the opponent is much more likely to then hold up removal during their turn because they know that Greasefang is a really powerful threat and they need to be able to deal with it before we get Parhelion back. Whereas if we wait until the end of the opponent's turn and discard it using a blood token, they're much more likely to tap out, which then gives us the all clear to go off with our combo. Additionally, we can also pitch Madness cards at instant speed, which allow us to cast Fiery Temper during our opponent's turn for 1 mana, allows us to play Blazing Root Wilder at instant speed, And we can also do some tricks against control decks as well, where we can ditch Croxer when they're not expecting it at the end of their turn, and then maybe we can escape it during the following turn. So the fact that we can crack blood tokens at instant speed is really nice. And the ability to get 2 creatures from our graveyard to our hand is really nice, especially in the mid to late game as well. So Blood Fountain is great at both enabling our discard synergies in the early game, and also making sure that we don't run out of gas in the late game. And when we get the 2 creatures back, being able to rebuy Greasefang is really important as well, because say we have the combo set up and we play Greasefang, if the opponent has a removal spell for it so we don't get to combo off, we can often just pass with a Blood Fountain on the battlefield, wait till the end of the opponent's turn, crack it to get Greasefang back to our hand, and then try the combo again the following turn. So Blood Fountain is just great at making sure that we don't run out of gas, whilst also enabling our discard spells, or our discard synergies in the early game. We've also got 4 copies of Faithless Looting, just the best discard enabler in the whole format. If you're running red and you want cards in the graveyard, you can't do better than Faithless Looting. It's so strong. And the fact we get to do this on turn 1 and pitch 2 cards is so strong. The fact it has flashback is great as well, because it means we can replay it later in the game. And additionally, if we need to use a looting effect and we don't have anything else, we can just pitch this to another discard effect and then reuse it later in the game as well there. So looting, don't really have much more to say about it. It's just the best card in the format if you want to be getting stuff into the graveyard. And then we've got 4 copies of Voldaren Epicure, which is a card that I've seen surprising amounts of in older formats actually, and I've been really impressed with it in this show as well. So it's a 1-mana 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to the opponent, and like the Blood Fountain, we also create a blood token here. So everything I said about the blood tokens of Blood Fountain applies here. We also get a 1-mana 1/1 that pings the opponent for 1 as well, so this can lean a lot more into our aggressive starts. If we have a fast start with multiple Root Wallers and Epicures, we can start getting in for a lot of damage against the slower decks. But the fact that this just creates a blood token that we can enable all our discard synergies with on a body is really powerful and works really nicely in this deck. Then we've got 2 copies of Magmatic Channeler. So this is a reusable discard outlet that sort of gets us, it doesn't get us card advantage, but it gets us card selection. So this is a card that's really powerful, especially against the slower, more grindy decks. The fact that it's a repeatable discard outlet is really great as well, but the reason that I'm only running 2 copies is it's not really a card that you want to be drawing in multiples, and it also can be too slow in certain matchups. Against the really fast decks I tend to board this out. And another little anti-synergy that we've got in the deck is if we hit Parhelion off the Magmatic Channeler effect, then that's basically a brick, because we obviously can't discard from exile. So if we hit Parhelion, we can't get it into the graveyard, and we're never really going to be hard casting it either. So there is a little bit of anti-synergy between Parhelion and Channeler, but I've been liking the 2 copies, and it does pull a lot of weight in the slower, grindier matchups as well. And then finally, the last discard outlet we've got in the deck is Seasoned Pyromancer. This is such a great card. Getting to loot away 2 cards when we have a lot of discard synergies is great. The fact that we can generate 1/1 blockers as well is a big reason that this deck is very good at stabilising against opposing creature decks, especially ones without flying. And if you've not played with Pyromancer before, you definitely need to be aware that you don't need to discard in order to draw the cards. So if you're completely empty-handed, you can play the Pyromancer and you just get to draw 2 cards. So you can gain a bunch of card advantage off this. And then, similar to Faithless Looting, we also get an effect in the graveyard as well. So we can pay 5 and exile it to create 2 1/1s. Typically we want to have Pyromancer in hand because its ability to refuel is really great, but if we need to use a looting effect and we don't have a better target to discard, then discarding this is fine, because then we get value off it later in the game as well. So Pyromancer really feels like the glue that sort of holds this deck together. Gives a really sick discard outlet, is a payoff for discard itself, creates tokens on the battlefield that we can use to both pressure the opponent and to chump block against the aggressive decks. It's just really, really sick card. And then the other discard payoffs. First of all, we've got 4 copies of Blazing Root Waller, so 1-mana 1/1. We can pay 1 to give it +2/+0 until end of turn, but it has Madness for 0. So that means that if we discard it off one of our blood tokens or looting effects, we get to put it into play for free, which is so powerful. We can have insanely fast starts. If we go looting, discard double Root Waller, that puts so much pressure on the opponent. And the fact that we can turn these into 3/1s both helps us pressure a lot against the slower decks, but also makes combat a real nightmare for the opponent as well, because we can trade this off with 3 toughness creatures that the opponent has, And we have so many ways to discard in the deck that we're going to be putting these into play for free so easily. Then we've got 4 copies of Croxer as well. You know, one of the big advantages of running black in the Madness Shell is access to Croxer. Now, casting this just from your hand is pretty reasonable. You know, getting to strip a card from the opponent's hand is pretty nice. But this is also a perfect target to discard to all of our discard synergies. And then bringing this back in the late game just gives us another really strong threat alongside the Greasefang and really helps us grind out in those slower games as well. And then finally we've got 4 copies of Fiery Temper. So similar to Root Waller, this has a madness cost. You know, we're never really happy to be paying 3 for this, but if we discard it, we can get to cast it for 1 mana, and it basically works like a lightning bolt. And you know, the great thing about the madness cards is you're kind of gaining card advantage. You know, if we're looting and discard 2 madness cards, we're essentially just drawing 2 off the looting and still getting to cast the other 2 spells as well. So Fiery Temper, really important in this deck because we're quite removal light. And so having Fiery Temper as a way to interact with the opponent's creatures, as well as just dealing direct damage to the opponent, is really important. And it's just another really nice payoff for all the discard synergies we've got going on in the deck. So that's the main deck. It's been so powerful to me. You know, we're basically playing that Mono Red Madness Shell with access to Croxer, and just with this insanely strong combo that we can either play on turn 3 or just set up for in the late game as well. So the deck has felt really, really powerful to me. Mana base wise, I think we've got 22 lands in here, which has felt like the right amount. You could potentially go down to 21 maybe because we have so much draw and discard, but missing land drops in the first few turns of the game, especially if we can't cast Greasefang on turn 3, is a disaster. So 22 has tested well for me. Obviously we've got a bunch of dual lands here, but that's mainly because we do have quite stringent mana constraints in this deck. We need black, black, red, red on turn 4 to enable the Croxer escape, which is really important. You know, having to wait until turn 5 to do that because we don't have the right lands is a bit of a disaster. We also need white, black for Greasefang in a primarily red deck. We want black on turn 1 for Blood Fountain. We want white on turn 1 for Portable Hole. So I think we do need to be running a lot of dual lands. Ideally, I would really like to fit in Den of the Bugbear or Hive of the Eye Tyrant in this deck. I'm just not sure quite what the right lands are to cut, and I feel like you do need to have a basic land in the deck because Field of Ruin is still pretty commonly run. You know, I've seen a lot of the blue-white control decks moving away from Lotus Field and running Field of Ruin instead. And if the opponent Field of Ruins your lands and sees that you have no basics, they're going to be aggressively taking your lands out in the early game, which is basically just a very easy way for them to win. So I think you need to be running 1 basic, and you know, I think you probably could run some man lands in. I think that's one change I want to make to the main deck, is try and figure out where I can cut some jewels in the mana base to fit some hives or dens in. But other than that, the deck's been performing really well. Very, very strong linear game plan. Now onto the sideboard. Nothing too special here. We've got 4 copies of Soul Guide Lantern, which is really important right now. First of all, for the Phoenix matchup. You know, being able to cut off the Phoenix line of attack as well as shutting off Delirium for Unholy Heat and Dragon's Rage Channeler is really important, especially because we're relying on Greasefang. You know, if we can shut off Delirium, they have to have something like an Abrade or a Lightning Axe in order to kill the Greasefang. If we can keep their Unholy Heat dealing 2 damage, it's a lot more difficult for them to interact with. And getting the combo off against Phoenix is kind of a guaranteed win because we get to keep 2 4/4 flyers on the battlefield, which basically stops them attacking with most of their creatures. I also imagine that these Greasefang mirror matches are going to be more popular, and Soul Guide Lantern is a really crucial card in those decks. And obviously there are other decks in Historic as well, like Dragonstorm and Reanimator, that are more built around the graveyard. So Lantern is a really important card. I'm running it over other graveyard hate, like, you know, Relic of Progenesis and Rest in Peace we obviously can't run because we have a bunch of graveyard synergies ourselves. And the great thing about Lantern over something like Tormod's Crypt is that we can afford to run 4 copies of it, which we want to do because we want to draw the first copy as often as possible in the matchups where it's relevant. But drawing multiples of this isn't bad because we can always just cycle away any excess copies that we have. So Lantern really important in the meta at the moment, mainly for Phoenix and the mirror match. Then we've got 3 copies of Fracture and 4 copies of Portable Hole. This is sort of our consideration for graveyard hate. As you can see, we do have a lot of graveyard synergies going on. You know, namely Croxer and the Greasefang combo both rely on the graveyard, and they are 2 of our most powerful cards. So we do need to have answers for graveyard hate in the sideboard. Now, we're not completely reliant on the graveyard. We do have the Madness cards which still work through it, and we can still, you know, attack with Pyromancer and its tokens and stuff like that, but being able to take out stuff like Rest in Peace is really important. And typically, you know, since we have so many graveyard synergies, if the opponent's playing Soul Guide Lantern, it is pretty easy for us to force them to crack it, because we have so many ways to interact with the graveyard and then we can rebuild. But something like a Rest in Peace is quite problematic for this deck, so I wanted to make sure that we had answers for them in matchups where that's likely. The reason I'm running a split of Fracture and Portable Hole here is because there isn't really a card that works as anti-graveyard hate that is good in both control and creature matchups. So against control, I usually bring in Fracture and Thoughtseize. Now Fracture is great because it takes out basically all of the commonly run graveyard hate that control runs, like Rest in Peace, Leyline of the Void, Relic of Progenitus, as well as being able to deal with Planeswalkers as well, so we can take out stuff like Narset and Teferi as well. So Fracture's really great there. And then Portable Hole is good against both graveyard hate and creatures in the creature deck. So, you know, similar to Fracture, it takes out Rest in Peace, Soul Guide Lantern, Grafdigger's Cage. One quick note about Grafdigger's Cage as well is it obviously does shut off stuff like Croxer and Looting, but the Greasefang Parhelion combo still works through Grafdigger's Cage because you're bringing back an artifact from the graveyard and not a creature. So just something to note there while I was talking about it. But yeah, Portable Hole takes out most of the commonly run graveyard hate, as well as being just generically good removal against creatures. I felt like Portable Hole was definitely the better choice than something like Rip Apart was a card that I was considering. But Portable Hole just feels much better to me because it's much better against the food decks because you can take out their Witch's Ovens and Trail of Crumbs. And I also found Portable Hole to be very important against a deck like Auras as well, where Rip Apart, their creatures will just outscale very quickly. So Portable Hole and Fracture, like I said, just good ways to deal with graveyard hate that also have other applications in the matchups where we're bringing it in. Then we've got 3 copies of Thoughtseize. Like I said, this is a card that I bring in alongside Fracture against the control decks. But Thoughtseize is obviously just great against any of the slower decks that are running more expensive spells. So, you know, spell-based combo decks and control are the main ones. But, you know, any deck that's running problematic big cards that we want to be able to strip from the opponent's hand, Thoughtseize is great. And then finally we've got 1 copy of Cleansing Nova. This is basically here as a consideration to the 9 Lives Solemnity deck. We don't really have, you know, Croxer can beat the 9 Lives Solemnity lock, but it's very slow and not that consistent. Whereas Cleansing Nova, if they ever play a 9 Lives, we can just play the Nova and we basically just win the game at that point because they don't really have any ways to counter it or anything like that. And additionally, you know, if we are against a matchup that goes super wide, like maybe a deck like Elves or Goblins, we can consider bringing this in as just a 5-mana sweeper for creatures as well. But this is primarily just here as a one-of so that we can beat the 9 Lives Solemnity lock. So that's the deck. I've been really impressed with it so far. It's a blast to play. And yeah, the Greasefang Parhelion combo feels super strong, and this feels like the best shell for it. So next up, there's going to be some gameplay. Just got a couple matches that I recorded while I was playing on the ladder, so you guys can see the deck in action. If you got any questions at all, drop me a comment below, and I hope you enjoy. Big up. Okay, sweet. Here we go. So we get to go first here. And oh wow, we've already got the combo. Yeah, you have to keep these. So we're against the Lurrus deck. If I had to guess, I'd probably say Green, Black, Food or Auras are the 2 of the most popular Lurrus decks in the format right now. Neither of which are particularly great at stopping the combo. Oh wow, we drew another Parhelion. So we're obviously ditching both Parhelions here. And yeah, as long as we, you know, if we're against Auras or Food, I think they don't really have good ways main deck to stop the combo. So Hallowed Fountain, almost certainly going to be Auras here. Just trying to think whether we want to play an untapped land here. Honestly, I think with what we've got in hand, I very much doubt we'll want to use this blood token here. You know, we kind of want to keep all 3 cards that we have in our hand. And we obviously want the 3rd land for Greasefang as well, so Sentinel. Okay, so it's almost definitely Auras we're against here. And thankfully, I don't think, you know, Mana Tithe is the only card I could think that they could possibly be running that stops the combo here. You know, Auras isn't going to be running Fading Hope or anything like that. So it looks like they have something. I was worried about Mana Tithe there because they do have priority, but I imagine if they're getting priority here, it's probably Karametra's Blessing. So we get the Parhelion back, crew it here, and since they must have Karametra's Blessing, I'm not going to attack with the Epicure because that will just give them value for the 1 mana that they've left open. Whereas if we just attack with Parhelion, they just, you know, that's a wasted mana for them. So yeah, we attack in for 13 here, and I really don't think they're going to be able to win this. We have both the blood token and we have the second red for Seasoned Pyromancer to get a Parhelion back into the graveyard. We already have a second one in there anyway, but yeah, I'm pretty sure we win this here. Unless they're playing a completely different deck in Divine Purge or something. Okay, Spirit Dance, yeah. So yeah, we basically won this. Might as well play it out just in case they have something weird that we're not expecting. So we'll start off by cracking the blood token, just in case we hit a madness card that we could pitch to the Pyromancer. Yeah, sweet. So I'm glad we did that first. Again, I'm pretty sure they're dead here, so it shouldn't make a difference, but just in case. So we get the Parhelion back here. Again, I imagine the only card that they have, if they have priority here, is Karametra's Blessing. Or some other 1-mana protection spell. And we'll just attack with the tokens. We'll get another 2 tokens here. So yeah, this just shows how powerful the combo is. You know, the opponent basically didn't get to do anything this game. And honestly, I don't really think Auras has that many good ways to interact with this. You know, I'm sure they run some graveyard hate, but typically the lists I've seen for Auras don't run that much. So, sideboarding wise here, Portable Hole is amazing because it deals with basically all their creatures, no matter how big they get. And Thoughtseize I think should be good here as well because we can strip their creatures from their hand. Fiery Temper's not great because their creatures outscale through toughness so quickly, and I think Crocs is probably a bit too slow here. You know, I very much doubt we'll get to escape a Croxer, and you know, discarding their auras isn't great. Although, having said that, maybe we're running too few discard payoffs if we cut Croxer. And going second, maybe Thoughtseize isn't as good, because if they go Sentinel on turn 1, then Thoughtseize in response to that, or Thoughtseize on our turn 1 will draw them a card, so we'll see. If this goes to a game 3, I think I'll go up to 3 Thoughtseize and probably cut the Croxer. And in all honesty, it probably might be correct to go 3 Thoughtseize this game anyway, but we'll see. Hopefully that doesn't end up costing us. So, I mean, I'm pretty confident with this matchup overall. Portable Hole is great in Removal. This is a decent hand. Portable Hole against Auras is great. So they have Sentinel on 1, which is a bit annoying. So we'll play a tap land, and then I imagine next turn we'll just play Portable Hole to kill their SRAM or Spirit Dancer and pay the Sentinel tax. So attacking for 1. Huh. Okay. That definitely changes things. So now we can play Channeler instead of Portable Hole, and then we can use the Channeler to pitch Parhelion and then go for turn 3 Greasefang, which, you know, typically if you can kill SRAM or Spirit Dancer on turn 2, you kind of almost always should, but I think we should go for this play here. You know, it does get punished by something like a Heliod's Punishment, but I think you can't turn down the opportunity to go for a turn 3 Greasefang combo. So they turn Spirit Dancer into a 3/5, which I'm glad it's not anymore because they could trade off with our 4/4 tokens off Parhelion otherwise. So I don't think we really want the second white here. So we'll just go for a mountain to save us the 2 life. And we'll go for the combo here. They'll obviously block one of the 4/4s here. And even though, you know, most games getting the turn 3 combo off is almost always going to be good enough to win, in this situation, I am concerned they could have a lifelink aura, and something like a Karametra's Blessing could be a potential way for them to stay in this game. Because if they get a huge life-linking Spirit Dancer and they can dodge this Portable Hole, we can't really attack around that very easily, so I'm really hoping to avoid that. If they don't have that though, I think we should win here. Okay, sweet. So even if they have, I can't remember the name of the life-linking aura, the blue-white life-linking Curious Obsession thing, even if they do have that, they don't have mana to protect the Spirit Dancer. Staggering Insight, that's the one. So they do have it. But thankfully they've used all their mana, so we can definitely kill it with Portable Hole here. So I think since we're killing the Spirit Dancer anyway, we can probably not block here, because we're guaranteed to kill it. Although, having said that, that was probably a misplay actually, because keeping, if we'd blocked with one of these 4/4s, we're not going to be killing any sooner because of that. Okay, hold on a second. So we don't want to tap land. I think we'll just take the looting here, and we'll just Portable Hold the Spirit Dancer. But yeah, I think we should have blocked with a 4/4 there, because we've now opened ourselves up to potentially losing to, the opponent could have something like All That Glitters and Aether Tunnel on SRAM. I wasn't really thinking about Aether Tunnel, so I think here we'll just discard Root Waller and a land. But yeah, if we'd been able to kill a turn earlier by not blocking with our 4/4s, I think that probably would have been correct. But since it doesn't make a difference here, and they probably run Aether Tunnel, that was... Yeah, see, if we'd have killed this turn, then yeah. So that was a misplay, I think. We just got to hope that we don't get punished for it. So they need, what would they need? They need All That Glitters, Aether Tunnel, and another Aura, I think, to punish us here. So we just got to hope they don't have that. But yeah, I mean, the opponent's start is pretty strong for auras. That's typically as good as auras can get, and even on the play, even on the draw, we're still looking like we're going to beat this. So I think, yeah, we're good here. They needed to have All That Glitters plus Aether Tunnel. Oh wow, okay, so they did have the Aether Tunnel. We got pretty lucky then. We made a pretty big mistake last turn not blocking. So we'll definitely block their 2 creatures here. We go down to 2. And so yeah, like I said, we should have definitely blocked the Spirit Dancer, but thankfully we're not getting punished for it. So yeah, we'll just discard the Parhelion to the Channeler again. Wow, hit another Portable Hole so we get to take out the SRAM. I mean, they're dead anyway, but it's good to go through the motions. Then we'll pass to combat, get Parhelion back again. And sweet, we got there. Nice. Okay, so we're going second here. So this hand is pretty clunky, but I think I'm willing to keep it, because if we draw a discard spell, like if we draw a looting, the upside of keeping this hand is so high. We've got the combo, we've got Root Waller and Croxer, now we've got Pyromancer, which is great. We have got a, we've now got a discard enabler. We obviously need to draw the second red. Or, I mean, we've already got the second red land, but we kind of want to play this pathway on black, so... Okay, Double Hallowed Fountain makes me think it's control. Sweet, so we drew the second red source, so we can now play this pathway on black, attack with the Root Waller, and then we'll probably just play Croxer here. So yeah, I mean, there's a chance this hand could have been really slow, especially if we didn't draw our third land here, or a discard enabler, but... Narset is a bit annoying. So we can't play Pyromancer next turn with Narset on the battlefield, obviously, but thankfully Root Waller can turn itself into a 3/1, which can kill the Narset. So, yeah, I think we'll play the Vantage first here. But yeah, like I was saying, now we've drawn discard enablers, this hand suddenly becomes really good. So we take out the Narset, and I think we'll just play looting here, probably discarding, yeah, Parhelion and Croxer. Obviously, if we drew another Root Waller, we'd discard that. Probably instead of the Croxer there, but... Now, since they've got Iteration, I'm hoping they just go Iteration and play a tap land. You know, if we can get Greasefang down here, that would be insane. You know, even though they're likely to be playing Sweeper effects, getting in for 13 hasty damage with Greasefang is no joke against control. And they have to tap out to deal with it as well, even if they do have a Sweeper, so... Okay, so they hit Helix, so let's hope they play a land and tap out with the Helix here. Okay, sweet, they do, so we can definitely get the Greasefang combo off here, which is sick. And we're very close to escaping Croxer now as well, so... Things are looking good here. So getting for 13 damage. Puts them down to 6. And then we've got both the Epicure and the Pyromancer to get Parhelion into the graveyard if we want to try and do Greasefang again the following turn. If they do have a Sweeper, I mean, we'll obviously have to see what we draw for the turn, but I don't think we have enough cards in the graveyard to escape Croxer. Well, we definitely don't have enough to escape Croxer yet, but we could play Pyromancer, ditching Parhelion and Epicure, or Parhelion and Fiery Temper. And then I think we might have enough cards to escape Croxer the following turn. Plus we'll have 2 Pyromancer tokens as well. So even if they do have a Sweeper here, we have a pretty good follow-up. Okay, sweet, they didn't have it. So, sideboarding here, pretty simple. Bringing 3 Thoughtseize and 3 Fracture. Fiery Temper is not great against control, and even though Channel is typically good against the slower, grindier decks, I think specifically against control, it's not a card I want in because we want to keep aggressive cards in. You know, we want to keep Root Wallers and Epicures in to get damage in the early game. Channeler is a great card against control if it survives, but the problem is that it dies to basically all the removal they're running. You know, if they weren't running Helix, I'd consider keeping it in a bit more, because if like blue-white has to use Fateful Absence, we at least get to draw a card off it, but considering Helix cleanly kills it, I don't think it's that good specifically against Jeskai, so... But yeah, the rest of the deck's great. Having Croxer in this matchup is great as well. Fracture's just good at killing Planeswalkers and Graveyard Hate. Okay, this is obviously a mulligan. And this... I mean, it's a bit awkward, but I think we have to keep this at 6. I'm trying to think what to put back here. You know, we don't have double red for the Pyromancer yet, but I think that's really important to refuel. We kind of want the Epicure as a discard outlet in the early game. We definitely want to keep the Greasefang because it has really high upside if we can draw Parhelion. So I think we're putting Fracture back here. I mean, if they have turn 2 Rest in Peace, we'll obviously regret that, but... Okay, sweet. So we drew an untapped red source on turn 1 for the Epicure, which is great. See what the opponent has here. Okay, so they portable hold the Epicure. We're pretty happy to see that. Okay. So looting's an interesting one. I don't really think we want to cast the looting here because it is card negative, and we kind of want to keep, you know, we're maybe 1 land too heavy here, but we don't want to discard Greasefang or Pyromancer. Drawing another Greasefang isn't great. We'll play the Courtyard because we want to play Haunted Ridge next turn, but yeah, I didn't really want to cast the looting there because we didn't really have many cards we actively wanted to discard. And, you know, using the blood token to get looting into the graveyard, we can at least cast it from the graveyard now. So here, I mean, I think we'll play Pyromancer here. Hopefully they won't counter it. I mean, maybe I should have played Greasefang instead, considering we have the second one, but I felt like the upside of getting a Pyromancer out there and discarding the Greasefang whilst getting tokens was higher upside. Third Greasefang's not exactly what I want to see. Going to play Haunted Ridge untapped here just to play around Censor and Jari Disruption. But considering... Yeah, okay, so they commit it. I mean, we'd rather have seen a counterspell because we don't really want to be drawing another one in 2 turns, but considering Greasefang just won us the first game, I think the opponent is probably going to be quite scared of it. So Teferi, I mean, obviously that's not great. we're not in a good position here. Oh wow. We're just playing Greasefang Tribal over here. So, I mean, all we can do is just cast each one out and try and attack Teferi with it. But yeah, I mean, this isn't looking good. We're in a pretty bad position here. Obviously, drawing 4 of a legendary creature when the opponent has Teferi isn't the best, but still got a chance. You know, we've got looting in graveyard, so if Greasefang can live, we can cast looting from the graveyard, and then if we hit Parhelion off the looting, we can suddenly bring it back again. So it's not like we don't have any outs here. We still can win, but it's just, it's not looking great. Okay, so they iteration here. I mean, considering Greasefang, even though it, you know, it's part of the combo, a 3-mana 4/3 against control does apply quite a lot of pressure, so they kind of have to deal with it. They tuck it with Teferi. I mean, I guess they know we're getting another one, but they have to keep dealing with it every turn, so I'm a bit surprised to see that. Ah, okay, they're going to Field of Ruin. So that will shuffle away the 2 Greasefangs at the top of our deck, but little do they know we still have 2 more. Okay, another land is nice here because they're only on 2 lands here. So we could looting a Parhelion into the graveyard and then Greasefang the Parhelion back, assuming they don't have Censor. Trying to think what order to do it in. I think we probably want to looting first in case we hit a Fiery Temper. If we hit a Fiery Temper here, we can just guaranteed kill Teferi if they don't have a counter spell. Oh wow. I mean, that's a great hit. Now we actually have a chance in this game. I mean, obviously hitting Parhelion would have been better there, but that's kind of as good as you're going to get outside of hitting Parhelion. So, just trying to think whether we want to play a Greasefang here. Honestly, I think we do, because, you know, the opponent has 4 cards in hand and an active Teferi. I don't think we're really going to be beating a sweeper here anyway. And, you know, even if they have a sweeper, holding on to a Greasefang when we have another one in hand doesn't really make our clock any faster. And if they don't have a sweeper and we don't play Greasefang here, it's very likely they could have a single target removal spell and a Shark Typhoon, for example. And that would be the difference between killing Teferi here and not. So I don't think we're really beating a sweeper here. And if they don't have a sweeper, this massively increases our chance of killing Teferi. Okay, so they do have a sweeper, but even though they did, I still think that was the right play. You know, if the creature we had in our hand wasn't another Greasefang, then there's an argument to holding on to it so that we can follow up a sweeper with 2 different creatures, but considering they were both the same... Yeah, considering they're both the same, I think that was the right play. Another land is obviously really bad here, but just trying to debate whether it's better to play Greasefang out or hold up mana for the Pyromancer. I think playing Greasefang's probably better here because if by some miracle they don't have any interaction, we can cleanly kill Teferi next turn, whereas the Pyromancer tokens would only be dealing 2 damage, so... Okay, they have Shark Typhoon, so... I mean, yeah, I very much doubt we're winning this, but I'm not going to concede quite yet. We still have some outs. So they plus Teferi. Oh wow, they're attacking, so are they going to use the sweeper here? Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, Greasefang, even without the combo, kind of has to be dealt with because it's got 4 power. Narset's not great because it shuts off a lot of our, you know, Faithless Looting now becomes a pretty terrible draw. And they have Archmage's Charm to counter what we hit, so yeah. I mean, I'll give myself another draw step, but I don't think we're going to win this one. Huh, okay. I mean, we could Thoughtseize away Archmage's Charm and then if they have just 3 other lands, we could maybe win off the Pyromancer tokens, but... Yeah, if we see their hand and it's just full of gas, we'll just concede. They might just counter it though, we'll see. Okay, so they draw 2. Okay, yeah, we're not being that. Alright, game 3. So sideboard wise, I'm still pretty happy with our configuration here. Just got a bit unlucky drawing the 4 Greasefangs that game. But yeah, overall I think Control feels... well, the games I've played against Control have felt pretty good so far, you know, having access to Croxer and Thoughtseize. You know, we have multiple ways to refuel with Seasoned Pyromancer and Blood Fountain, and if they ever tap out, Greasefang threatens so much damage out of nowhere. So this hand, I mean, obviously if we draw a looting or something it becomes insane, but the fact we don't have a discard outlet and we don't have any white mana for Greasefang, I think we have to mull. This hand is great. So we've got looting into Rootwaller. I think we can afford to put a land back here considering we're going to be looting on turn 1. If we draw Parhelion it's great. Oh wow. Nice. So we get to Rootwaller on turn 1 and get Parhelion into the grave here. And we can attack for 3 next turn. Since we haven't got a turn 2 play at the moment, we can just pump the Rootwaller, which is great. Okay, they portable hold the Rootwaller. That's fine. It's a little bit annoying, especially because we don't draw a turn 2 play here, but if the opponent just plays a tap land here, you know, they do have a lot of ways to stop this. If they have Sense Adrari Disruption, Fateful Absence or Helix, those are all ways that they could stop the combo, but they need to have those cards. Okay, sweet, they play a tap land, so we get to go Greasefang, Parhelion, and then what, that puts them down to 5, I think? And then they need exactly Divine Purge here. You know, Anger of the Gods doesn't even save them here because we get to keep the 2 Angel tokens. So I think Divine Purge is the only card that will save them here. Yeah, sweet. Alright, nice, we got there.